Good morning, Dave.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Ah,
Willows.
same as always. How about you?
Well, I'm a little snowed in right now. We got a lot of snow yesterday. In
Oh,
fact, this is the most amount of snow I've seen in this area in over a decade.
I am going to hold my mouth. My first impulse was to be like, "You don't know bad weather. You don't know snow," but that's just like my Winnipeg blood. Makes me argue with
Yeah.
people on Twitter that that's not cold. I'm looking at my screen here. It's negative 30 ambient temperature right now. That's without the wind chill.
I didn't even look at the weather this morning. I'll just quickly look.
Negative
It's saying
42 with the
minus,
wind chill right now.
ouch. Yeah, we're a nice balmy minus 13. Feels like minus 23, so that's not too bad.
That's not too bad, yeah. um anyway, the reason I wanted to get you on here today is because I don't want to say a fascination because that sounds kind of weird, but like I like entrepreneurship. That's something that
Right.
I do with my whole soul. And I
Life.
like
Yeah.
seeing other entrepreneurs and whatnot. And so when I started my business, I was like, before that, I was in, people always like, what did you do before this? And I go, high school. Like I started my first startup at 18 years old, jumped right into it, and then started acquiring businesses. So I never had a job before. So I never know anything different um,
Right.
than just being an entrepreneur. So I'm curious because you recently, a round of applause, were able to quit your job and go into business full time. So I wanted to
That's right.
know kind of like what that was like how we came to that conclusion that it's time to quit, how we came, that lead up, and then I want to talk about how it's going
Yeah.
recently. So let's start. Like,
Okay. Well, I guess
where did you think? Where did you come up with this idea, or when did you know you wanted to be a business owner?
so there's a lot of questions there. There's a lot to unpack. This isn't the first time I've been in business for myself. So there's been a few other ventures when I've lived in different areas of the country. And then, so basically, I guess one of my first ventures was when I lived in Vancouver. And I had a small business called Vancouver Landscape Construction, and we built decks and fences and so on and so forth. And I was starting to grow that company in the late 2000s. And then in the early 2010s, 2011 or 2012, due to unfortunate circumstances within my family, I ended up moving back to Ontario and more or less abandoned the Vancouver landscape construction. Although oddly enough, I still get on Google Business, I still see people looking at it, and I'm like, I feel so sorry for whoever has that phone number now.
Yeah, no kidding. That's funny.
So basically, then when I moved back to Ontario, it was just like, okay, just get a job, and that's what I did for more than over a decade now, working for various different companies. When I first moved back to Ontario, it was like the solar farm construction boom. So I worked all over Ontario, helping to build solar farms. Very interesting job, very interesting work. And then basically I got to the point in my life, and as you know, I'm not getting any younger. I'm now well into my 50s,
Time comes
and it
for us
was
all.
yeah, right. So I got to the point where it was actually the weather that I was having a really difficult time with in construction.
Hmm.
Like the not just winter. I'm talking about like being out there in 44-degree Fahrenheit heat in the summer, and you drink 8 liters of water, and that's just not enough for the day because you're just dying in the heat. Um, and then the solar farms were also built on not great land, so it was a lot of swampy land. So you're trudging through mud. You'd be in your rubber boots that come up to you, almost up to your knees, and you'd still be losing your boots in the mud. And I'm just like, this is crazy. And then, of course, yeah, also the winter, working outside in the winter, and you're using nuts and bolts, so you pretty well have to use your fingers. And again, like, I mean, what it's like to try to use your hands when they're just freezing cold and you're using metal bolts. So I was like, okay, it's time for me to get out of construction. So I did end up getting an office job, and worked there for just shy of 6 years, and it was a good job. And I'm not gonna say anything bad about them. They're good people, everything like that. But for the last probably 2 to 2.5 years, even the last 3 years of the job, I was becoming less and less happy there. I was, working for a decent wage, but not like I wasn't like making a killing. And so it was kind of like, you know what? I had this idea in the back of my head for over 2 years to start a logistics company. And I'm like, if you think about it, look around you. Everything that is around you at some point moves on a truck from point A to point B. Whether it's coming, it could be coming on a ship, it could be coming by via rail, by not on via rail, but on on
Via
the
rail.
rail. Yeah. So sure, okay, even you get those containers to the shipyard or the rail yard, those containers then get loaded onto a truck, and the truck takes it to its final destination or to a distribution center and then eventually to the final destination. So it's like every single thing in your house at some point has been on a truck. And so it's just one of those businesses that makes sense. Yes, there are a lot of other companies doing it. There is a lot of competition, but because everything moves on a truck, there's like always room for one more. So I think, I don't know, does that answer a lot of your first question?
Yeah, I think so. Like, it's how old were you when you did your first business?
Okay, actually, I'm going to back up even further back to the early 2000s, a business that I was going to start but didn't,
Hmm.
and I really regret not starting it. So, again, the early 2000s, this is around 2001 or 2002, I was living in Vancouver, and I wrote a business plan, and honestly, it was to this day the best business plan I ever wrote. And the name of that company was going to be Vancouver Mountain Shuttle because I really hated the Cypress Mountain shuttle bus. Anybody who's from Vancouver, the Lower Mainland, will, or whoever's visited there, will know that there's basically three ski hills just on in North Vancouver, just on the north shore of Vancouver, right? So my idea was to run a shuttle bus from UBC through downtown, across the Lionsgate Bridge, one to Cypress Mountain, and then as you grow, one to Grouse Mountain, one to Mount Seymour as well. And Grouse Mountain, you could also get there by public transit. And I've done that many times before too, but public transit, you're stopping every 3 blocks at a bus stop. And so, that's a little painful. The Cypress Mountain Shuttle, I really despised it for reasons I won't go into. And so I did not end up starting that business. And to this day, I regret it because in 2002, I even had it in the business plan that by, year eight, 2010 Vancouver Olympics, I was going to be making like just, cash hand over fist,
Hmm.
right? Was the idea. And so the only thing that kind of stopped me from doing that was I was going to have to go and get a like not like a full-on bus driver's license, but a license to be able to shuttle more than I think it's more than 8 people or more than 10
Yeah, it's
people
like a class
at a
two
time.
license here. I don't know what it says in BC, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
There's different classes of licenses.
yeah, it might have been called Class Two or Class Three in BC as well, something like that. And I just never did it, and it was kind of like it was one of those things where I was like, why didn't I do it? So at that time, in the early 2000s, I was in my mid 20s, mid to late 20s. So even at that point, I had previous work experience, whether it was part-time jobs in high school and college or full-time jobs after college, right? Um, and then after that business plan that I didn't follow through on, I then kind of went back into just working for others for a few more years or continuing to work for others for a few more years. And then by the late 2000s, by about 2007 or 8 is when I started the Vancouver landscape construction business. And so by that time, add another 10 years and I'm into my early to mid 30s, I guess. Yeah, so that's how old I was. And then here we are another 15 years later, like time just flies by.
Yeah, because I guess like I try to be um not objective, but I try to be like look at my situation that I'm not really the the outlier usually, like starting a
You're
business as
definitely the
early as I am.
exception to the rule, right?
Yeah. So even like in your mid 20s, getting your shit together enough to like write a business plan. Like a lot of people that I know, like I'm 28 years old, and a lot of people, my friends and acquaintances or people I went to school with, like they can't get their shit together for more than an hour a day to write a business plan. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
so it's like even having the kind of mentality when you're that young, um, probably shows something about your, you know, your character or whatever. Um,
So my educational background as well is I went to it's called St. Lawrence College in well they have three campuses in Kingston, Cornwall, and Brockville, I believe, are the three campuses. And I was born in Kingston, Ontario, and grew up north of the city. Spent a lot of my early 20s in Kingston before heading out to Vancouver. And so my um, college education, my background is marketing or business admin and marketing. So I had a lot of experience writing business plans as like case studies. And then even once I was done college, I wrote a business plan for my sister-in-law for a restaurant. And when she took that to the bank, she told me the bank was like so impressed with that business plan. So it was like another good business plan that I wrote at the time, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I do have experience and a background with writing business plans. Obviously, that does help a lot.
Yeah. I find, I don't know about you, but like I have found that like a business plan is just a tool to get like funding, and then week one you just throw it out the window because business changes. Like I remember when we wrote our startup, they wanted 5 years of projections. And I'm like, now, like, and like, you know, when I was 18, it's like, okay, we'll just make up some numbers. But now it's like, after doing business in a startup for 10 years, um, I'm like,
You're like, how do you even
there's
guess,
no
right? Like,
way you can accurately predict revenue in 5 years. Maybe if you're Coca-Cola size or whatever, but there's no way a startup can accurately, I
right,
don't think accurately depict their sales 6 months from now. Like stuff changes so much. And then especially with like small, I don't want to say low revenue businesses, but like, you know, businesses under 100K in revenue, one client can double your sales. So it
yeah.
like there's no way. I don't know. It's just I have never had a business plan that like I sit down and read with my business partner and go, okay, we gotta move this way, and like it's I don't know. Entrepreneurship is much more fluid than I think the banks make it seem with their rigid rules with
Right.
funding and whatnot, and they're getting worse too because you know inflationary and COVID and all this. They're trying to tighten and fund less people, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So with this business that I'm now about 6 months into, at the beginning, I did start to write another business plan, thinking, oh, well, you have to have a business plan. But much to your point, I kind of tossed that aside and just started doing,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah. Which is like, because imagine if you had this like rigid business plan, and then an opportunity presented itself, and you said no because it wasn't part of the plan.
right.
Like that's I'm
I mean,
scared.
if
I'm scared that like business students do that when they eventually try to start a business. You know what I mean? Like I'm scared that they're like, oh, this is what I
right.
was taught. Like go by the business plan.
So you definitely have to adapt. And I mean, that almost should be written into the business plan, the adaptability of your business, right?
Yeah. One example I give nowadays is like who pre 2019 wrote in their business plan under the risks and challenges. Oh, there's a chance of a global pandemic that shuts down my business for a
Right.
year. Like, you know, but now people are putting that
Nobody
in.
saw that
No,
coming.
exactly. But now people are putting that in the risks and challenges in their business plans. Like, oh, resurgence of COVID is now like a, you know, a risk that, but like no one thought of
Yeah.
that.
Or bird flu
Well,
or
exactly. Like, I
SARS
mean,
or any of the others, right?
because now that I guess we the government has shown that they would close businesses and shut people down, it's like now it's a risk because it's something that's historically
Yeah.
happened, right? Um,
See, and there's another thing about the logistics industry is it's an essential service.
mhm.
Goods have to continue to move around. You know, you still need to get food into that grocery store, right? So,
I would even argue that during the pandemic, we would have benefited from more logistics companies because I was having a
Right.
hell of a time getting stuff. Like,
Yeah.
we had month delays on stuff, and not that you have a boat that you can go to China and pick up containers for me, but it was, just having a more robust system we may have
Right.
benefited
And
from that.
the cost of things, like if you're importing from China, those shipping container costs just skyrocketed
Yeah,
over that course of time. Because again, I knew this because of that previous position that I had as a purchaser, and I was dealing with the food supply chain,
yeah,
and so trying to get anything from China, and it was like the COVID. A container would cost say $3,000 to transport from China to North America. During COVID, it went up like 22,000, 25,000, and you're just like, it actually helped North America because it's like, well, it just makes more sense to now buy
yeah.
domestically than importing from China.
Yeah, there's a couple breweries here that pitch and get like full train cars of empty cans, because it gets the cost way down if you can buy a full container. So, but no
Right.
one has 500 grand or no whatever it is, 250 grand to drop on a container. So there's a couple
Right.
breweries that pitch together. They throw it on one guy's yard and then they kind of divvy it out or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so during the pandemic, I remember, yeah, that we used to pay, I think, about 8 grand Canadian landed in Winnipeg. Because we buy some cans, we don't buy them as much as the breweries, but I have some canned wine coolers and stuff. So we just buy like a pallet
Right.
or two. We don't go in with the brewery when we pitch, but we just buy a pallet or two from him every time he lands a container.
Right.
And yeah, he's like, I want to show you these numbers so you know that I'm not screwing you guys over. But we were paying like $8,000 total landed, in shipping costs in central Canada away from the coasts.
Yeah. So
And
you're
then,
paying rail as well.
yeah, exactly. And then he paid like $30,000 at the peak of the pandemic there to get one. But it was like
Wow.
we were all going to go out of business if we didn't get something because we just
Right.
didn't have any product to to sell. Everyone's out. Um,
Yeah.
and then the American stuff, there's like American can manufacturers, but they just weren't. You couldn't get them at the time, and it was a
Yeah.
mess for a while there. Um, but I mean, like your cost as a logistics company didn't go up much. It was just supply demand, right? Like you're making $30,000 for a trip you used to make $8,000 for. Wow, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but
Exactly.
I think a lot of that too was like China specifically was like closing their ports because they were trying to do COVID zero for a while there. So they were like just 2 weeks at a time,
Yeah.
wouldn't have anything leaving. So that's neither here nor there. But so as far as your operation goes, what you kind of do a little bit of everything, right? Like you're doing a little bit of courier, you're doing a little bit of long distance.
Yeah. Well, I would call it medium distance.
Sure, a 5 hour drive or whatever
In
is
the
long
trucking,
distance for me, but I guess yeah, it's all
yeah.
relative.
In the trucking industry, long distance is like bringing things from California to Ontario, and I'm not going into the U.S. That might be something in the future as the business grows. But right now, I'm restricted to Ontario, which is fine.
Just because
Ontario is
like
a big
licensing.
province, and licensing, CVOR. So CVOR is commercial vehicle operator registration, which I have. So I am a legitimate logistics company. And like you said, yeah. So I kind of have it divided into two categories, being courier and delivery. And courier is just smaller packages that, a 25-pound box that can go into any vehicle. And then the delivery is the larger, full pallets that need to go dock to dock. And obviously, dock to dock is awesome because
Yeah, you
there's
forklift into it,
no
forklift
no
out.
physical labor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because like between the two businesses that I own, we use all types of couriers because I like for the wine business, we use couriers to deliver one bottle to one person. Like people can order on our website and we ship a bottle, and then we also use
Yeah.
couriers to ship full pallets to the liquor stores and the liquor warehouse and whatever. Um, And then for the stamp company, we do a lot of like one stamp to the office or whatever. So we use different couriers. So I use over the years I've used dozens of different courier services. I find with me it's like you were right. Like there's a lot of competition, so I find like I get a lot of people that are like trying to outbid what I'm currently paying,
Hmm.
and I'm like I'm not super loyal to any of my couriers, so it's
Right.
like when someone does come along with like we'll beat the price by 30% or whatever, it's like okay, like check this out. But then I've
Now,
also
do you
had
sometimes
sorry.
just use FedEx, UPS? Like, I mean, that's pretty simple to pick up the
Yeah,
one eight
like
hundred FedEx or whatever the number is.
yeah, we so I am a member of the Canadian Federation for Independent Small Business or Independent Business CFIB, and they have a system where they've worked out like a deal with all FedEx, UPS, all the carriers. And then
Yeah.
so I have their program on my computer and I just put in the box details and then they pull the cheapest and fastest option
Right.
from those. Um, so that's cool. But so
That sounds like something I should get myself listed on.
yeah, I can get you a link if you want to look into it.
Yeah, link or contact.
Because yeah, I use that personally only for mailing um stuff. So either mailing wine or mailing the stamps, like if they're not going like within my city that someone can drive them. Um,
Yeah.
but then it's like a whole thing because with the most delivery companies like UPS and FedEx, they won't deliver to like PO boxes in like rural Manitoba, and they
Right.
won't they're inclined to just drop stuff or like not drop like put it down in front of the house if they can't get a response and leave. But
Yeah.
with the alcohol, they need to ID somebody.
Right.
So
So
I've
it's
had
not some 14-year-old kid picking up a bottle of.
yeah, exactly. Because I
Yeah.
don't have any ways to, I have a click box on my website that says you're over 18 or 19 years old, depending on your jurisdiction, when you're ordering this, but I have no way to
But
verify
but
that.
anybody can click that, right?
Exactly. So they have to ID people, but so I've had, I think they've changed it recently, but like we tried to use like FedEx or whatever back in the day, and they were like, "Oh, sorry, if it's alcohol, we're not touching it because we don't want to have to deal with dropping it." So I actually use Canada Post a lot
Right.
for the wine, but then Canada Post goes on goddamn strike for 3 months, and
Right at Christmas
yeah, and
time.
people are still
Right.
ordering
Right
wine.
when people are buying wine for gifts for
Yeah,
Christmas.
so
I'm
that
sure you have
was
probably pretty good sales in December, I would think.
yeah, we do over 50% of our year's revenue between May long weekend and September long weekend and the month of December. Like so those periods together is over half our annual revenue. Um but yeah, so that was bad. But I think like during the strike, the kind of private suppliers kind of pivoted their business model and started doing more stuff that Canada Post used to do. With
Right.
the only ones, so I have like a wine club subscription service, and we have like members all over, and we have one member in the Northwest Territories, and every quote I got from like private carriers was just like $500, like or whatever.
Yeah.
And Canada Post can do it for like 30, and I think because they're subsidized to ship stuff to the
Right.
north. Um, so that was like the only, and like I'm not particularly a Canada Post hater. Like I think they do a good enough job. I mean, like
Hmm.
we're gonna have to deal with the problem that they don't make any money at some point, but
Yeah.
um,
Kick that can down the road.
yeah, we can get. But like I think someone could probably talk me out of this, but I think I'm under the opinion that if you're a public service, you shouldn't be able to just stop and strike.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like we had that here. Um, our public insurance, our car insurance, you have to get car insurance through Manitoba Public Insurance, and they just went on strike. and it's like you can't do it. Like you can't renew your license, you can't
Oh,
get insurance, and it's like that seems like if you're going to insist on being the only
yeah.
option, you should have some sort of system.
Contingency, like,
I don't know, like
car dealerships can't like that. It's like, well, we sell this car, but you can't insure it. So,
yeah. So my dad was a public school teacher for 40 years, and he always talks a story about there was this huge strike of teachers in like the 80s or 90s or whatever, and the strike went on so long the kids all had to repeat a grade that year
oh,
because they
the
just
kids
weren't.
get punished for, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so the administrator, the government, and the teachers all came together and they signed a thing that says if we ever go on strike again, we'll keep teaching, but
right.
you have to agree to some sort of arbitration or whatever. Um,
Yeah,
and that was because like, okay, we're punishing these children for nothing that has to do with them.
yeah, that's unfortunate for
Yeah,
them.
so that's kind
Hey,
of how
I
I
was just
feel
gonna say,
with
let's
like
circle.
Canada Post and stuff as they go on strike,
Yeah,
and it's hurting small business owners.
yeah, I was just gonna circle back to, that the conversation of entrepreneurship, and let's talk a little bit about successes and failures. And let's start with successes, and I'm gonna, I guess, toot my own horn a little bit here. So,
No, you should.
as you know, my my business is just barely 6 months old, right? Around last mid-September, early October is when I started it. So, some of the successes that I'm, I guess, proud of is that, well, one, being able to acquire that very first customer is obviously a huge success in any business. Is still with me. So repeat business. And I have a few customers, clients who are repeat customers. And I think that speaks volumes to the level of service I'm providing
Yeah.
and what I'm doing for them. So that's very first customer. They are all actually based in Kingston. So I have a nice little hometown connection there. And a lot of it is just the courier boxes. It's all for them, actually. It's all courier stuff like 25-pound boxes, either going from Kingston to Toronto as samples. They're in the food industry as well, so it could be samples of whatever going to different food companies or things from Toronto coming back to them. I have moved some other random things for them as well, like I moved some desks from Kingston to Toronto for them. I took a laptop from Kingston to Toronto for them, but for the most part, it is just food sample products moving around back and forth between Kingston and Toronto. So, and I'm based right in between the two. I'm on the Bay of Quinte region. So anyone listening not familiar with Bay of Quinte, it's the largest bay on Lake Ontario. If you look at a map, it doesn't even look like a bay because it's very oddly shaped, but it is a bay on the Lake
Technically.
Ontario. um, so yeah, just the repeat business and the fact that the business is growing quickly. Like I said, would I like it to grow quicker and be, making even more and more revenue? Obviously, of course. But am I disappointed with the growth that I've already had in 6 months or less? No, definitely not. Right? Like that you got to kind of take a step back and stay level headed as well, realizing that, hey, Rome wasn't built in a day, and just the fact that, you know even this early on, you're making enough to cover your costs and pay some bills, and that's, I mean, as you know, I know some of your backstory from when you were 18, and that first 18 months of your business, not so, maybe not what you were hoping for either, but hats off to you for sticking through that. So, and that's a huge success on your end as well. Um,
Yeah, like
so I'm gonna,
did you have like savings that you've earmarked for like living off of if the business takes a while to like produce revenue?
yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I sold off some stocks and created some cash that way, and also have taken on more debt than I want, but as you know, business debt is not as bad as consumer debt. Um, it's
Yeah,
still it's still stressful because it's still debt,
of
but
course.
it's way different when it's business that's creating when it's business debt that's creating revenue and income as opposed to consumer debt that is just basically
Yeah,
eating away at you.
paying 22% interest on a credit card doesn't seem as bad when you can sell the product or service you're paying for, you know, the whatever
Right,
the markup, 500%, so whatever it is, it's
right.
yeah, I am a debt as a tool absolutist. I
Yeah,
argue with a lot of people on X that are always like, no, you need to have no debt to be successful. I'm like, no, you need to be in
yeah.
more debt actually.
Yeah, tell that to guys like, Elon Musk and Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary. Like, I'm sure they've all leveraged millions or billions of dollars of debt over their careers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I want to talk about another success,
Hmm.
and that is winning a contract. And I'm not sure if I can say the name of the company or not, but so basically, it is a 7 day a week contract, and it is a north to south contract. So as you know, Kingston to Toronto is east to west. And so winning this bid, it's going to be starting in March, I believe March 3rd. Not sure when you're going to have this come out, but by that time I might be on the road. And it's a 7 day a week contract to move products back and forth between the north and the south. And it's about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive each way. So not too bad. And so this contract, I did bid it low, and so it's not going to be like hugely profitable, but it is going to have like guaranteed revenue and keep that cash flow. Again, as you know, as a business owner, cash flow is
Cash flow is king.
winning this contract is going to create revenue. And as you know, as a business owner, cash flow is everything. Just having that constant stream of cash coming and going. And there is also an opportunity to pick up more along the way, meaning that even though this one isn't overly profitable, if I can pick up a few more, even if it's like 2 days a week out of the seven, just to sort of add to that little bit of income, that will be huge. So that is another huge success. Now, because that's a 7 day a week contract, I've already talked to some guys I know that I'm like, okay, there's going to be days where I need to run the east to west run. Are you going to be available to, take a trip north south for me, and I'll, pay you whatever it is, $100 plus your gas money. And so yeah, I've got some guys on board to help me out that way as well, because obviously anybody that you want to make an extra $100 just to go for a 2.5 3 hour drive, right? Like who doesn't?
Yeah,
Who doesn't, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. Because that's
yeah, so
so. Are like you're like subcontracting to other logistics companies, or are these like
just people I know. So
yeah,
they're yeah, not other logistics companies. It's just some guys I know that are willing to help me out, and I'm willing to kind of help them out as well, right? Like, hey, the one guy I talked to, he likes to play golf, and he's like, green fees aren't cheap. And I'm like, yeah, well, every time you take a drive for me, just think of it as earning yourself a green fee. And he's like, that's pretty good, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah, I guess like the only thing you have to worry about is just like I've found that like the less formal an agreement, the more difficult it is to get people to actually do their job. You know what I mean?
right,
Like where people like as soon as you this isn't an employee of yours, it's not another company. So they're like, I don't feel like going today, but you have a
yeah.
contract for 7 days a week. Then it's like, all right, now I got to figure something out. So, because like,
Yeah, and I know there will be challenges in the future because, like, I'm not going to give up my east west runs, the Toronto to Kingston runs. Those ones pay me extremely well.
mhm.
Um, or even like I think you might have seen the map I posted where I was driving all the way up to Petawawa. And if you don't know where Petawawa is or have never been there, it's not an easy drive to get there. It's a good ways away. It's about depending on which way you go, at least 4 hours in one direction, right? If not four and a half. Um, and then driving from Petawawa to the GTA, not Grand Theft Auto. I get that all the time on X. I post GTA. I'm going to the GTA. Greater Toronto area, right?
Yes, because Toronto is actually 12 worse cities that all like to call themselves Toronto. Like if you're from
Yeah.
Oshawa, and then someone asks where you're from, you're like, "Oh, I'm from Toronto," but you're actually from Oshawa. I'm sure that happens in Kingston as well. People are like, "Oh yeah, I'm from Toronto," and it's like,
Kingston's far enough away that
yeah,
it's a completely
Kingston's like
different
two and a
city.
half hours away.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, but
and
so
then
yeah,
yeah, Toronto traffic is never fun either. But that's, I don't know if you saw the picture I posted the other night when I got home. I was like, Toronto traffic sucks, but this makes it a lot better. And it was just a whole bunch of $100 bills. I'm like,
that's funny.
I can
No,
sit on traffic for this.
yeah, no kidding. Um, yeah, because I guess like for a I'm trying to think like my personal experiences like from a courier standpoint, like the those are the people that we use the most, like the people that you know
Yeah,
whatever. The only way that gets efficiently cheap for the customer is density of routes and like the amount of drivers, right? Because like when I'm booking a
right.
courier from one of my businesses to the customer, I want it delivered within 3 hours, and I want to pay $7 or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like it must be difficult um, right now, but then I see that as like a part of your business that could expand as you can like hire more people and whatnot.
Definitely.
But
Yeah, and that's
you probably make more money on the bigger stuff though, like margin
no,
wise. No, that's interesting.
no, no. That's I was going to get into the lessons learned. Lessons learned is I would not have even, hindsight being 2020, knowing what you know now.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even have bought the big truck to begin with. I would have just started with the couriers and
interesting.
that. Yeah,
Is it just sheer distance? Like, I guess cost of running a bigger truck is obviously higher. Is this
yeah.
like how many ton? Like, is it a 3 ton truck or is it just a pickup truck?
My big truck, it's a five
It's a
ton.
5 ton. So you got is that like
Yeah,
you got to get it re-inspected every year?
yeah. Commercial inspection, safety, and e-test as well. So e-tests are a thing of the past in Ontario for just like personal vehicles, but e-testing, emissions testing is still done on commercial vehicles.
Yeah, we looked into getting a 5 ton way back in the day, or probably a 3 ton, and we like did the math on how much like annual inspections would cost versus how much we're shipping in a year, like using a courier,
And
and it was
the
like, yeah.
maintenance and upkeep parts on those trucks are not cheap either.
Well, and then that's
So
the thing is if you're getting a safety every single year, you probably have to replace stuff more often than I would in my vehicle that I don't have to get inspected every year. So
right.
your annual maintenance costs are going to be higher. But that's so what is the most profitable like thing that you do? Is it it's like within the city doing courier stuff? Or is it like this you're talking about like bringing a laptop from one city to another city?
Yeah, it's the courier stuff. Right now, that the Kingston to Toronto run is profitable on the courier side. Um, the other one, the Petawawa to Toronto, is also profitable, but it's just, I guess they're both close to the same, I guess, profit margin. I haven't actually done the math to see which one comes out ahead, but they're both pretty good. And yeah, I'm happy with them, and I'm happy that they're repeat customers that
Yeah.
keep coming back.
Yeah, that definitely like you mentioned that I think that definitely shows in an industry that it's not a huge barrier to entry, like any guy with a pickup truck can become a courier. I think it definitely
Yeah,
shows that they want to go with you every single time, that your price is right
you
and
don't even
your
need a
service
pickup
is right.
truck. You can have pretty well any vehicle will do it, right? Like
Yeah.
a hatchback or a compact SUV or whatever, as long
Yeah,
as
I
you have
mean,
enough space for
you
some
should
small stuff.
yeah, we have an Amazon warehouse here now in Winnipeg that just opened relatively recently. And so I guess you can like sign up to deliver Amazon packages like just in your car or whatever. um, as like a contractor, and you should see some of these cars driving. It's just like a little tiny Honda Fit stuffed with Amazon packages. Like just,
Right.
they don't care if it's getting done, right? They don't care how it's happening. But
So
um,
we have an Amazon warehouse here also, and it's I think a year and a half old now since it opened. But they have a contract with a company called Intelcom, and you see these Intelcom vans all over town all the time, zipping up and down towards the Amazon warehouse. So I don't know if I would have any luck trying to get in to Amazon as well. I haven't really thought about it because I know Intelcom has the majority, if not all, of that business. So
I have an acquaintance that moved to one of the mountain BC towns on the Alberta border there, Kelowna maybe,
like
Kamloops maybe, one of those ones.
Revelstoke,
Yeah, one of those ones. But he's from here, or he's from Europe originally, but I met him here, and I think he's still doing it if I recall. But last time I talked to him, he was making a living. He had like 5 or 6 vans, and they would just do courier service basically through the mountains. But he
right?
started doing that, and then Amazon contacted him and like made him the Amazon delivery person for like that region, and like he dumped every other
Yeah.
part of his business, and he's just a full-time Amazon driver now basically.
So my accountant has actually warned me about that because I've told him about this 7 day a week run, and he's like, "But you're not going to be doing just that." And I'm like, "No, no, there's no way I'm giving up my other sources of revenue, and I want to continue to grow as well, right? Like, if you get stuck into one, then you're not growing your business. It's very stagnant, very fast." But my accountant's point is, if you're only doing one, he's told me a story about some other. He's told me the story a few times. If you're only working for one company or one client, CRA at some point might say you're not a
Hmm.
subcontractor, you're an employee.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So you definitely have to be careful with that. So basically, the long story short, there's my accountant was quite happy to hear that I was going to not only do this one 7 day a week run, but do others as well, and eventually, hopefully, continue to grow the business to the point where the other guys who will be driving for me kind of graduate from part-time casual into part-time, three-quarter part-time into someday full-time, right? And that's the idea: is grow the business. As I've already mentioned, I'm not getting any younger, and at someday we all have that dream of just retiring and taking it easy. I guess most people do,
Some of us.
and so it's like, yeah, so it's like, okay, well, in 5 to 7 years, can I grow this business to the point where one of the bigger players come to me and say, "Hey, Dave, we'll buy you out," and I say, "I'll take your $5 or $10 million or whatever the company might be worth at the time, and say, cash me out, cash me outside."
So yeah, that was a question I wanted to ask too. Was that's do you have an exit strategy in mind when you started? Is you that's what you want to get acquired?
Yes,
Yeah. So and that's fine.
that
Like
is.
I think people just need to have an exit strategy, I think. Whatever it is, I doesn't matter. But if that's your exit strategy, then I think that's good almost for entrepreneurs because it's like it means you keep your integrity high, you keep your books clean because it's like at any time if you're going to get bought, you want your company to be good and running
Right.
good and kind of keeps you accountable to someone you don't know yet. But
Yeah.
um did you have like revenue goals in mind for like year 1, year 3?
Yeah. So again, because I started in like I said, mid September, early October, I didn't really have any revenue goal for the end of 2024. It was just sort of like try to get some revenue, get
Yeah.
some clients, get moving. But yeah, I definitely have a revenue goal for 2025 being year one as a full year. And, it's 100K in revenue, which winning this 7 day contract is going to put me extremely close to that. with the other clients that I have, as long as they continue to keep coming back to me, I think I will be able to achieve that. Of course, this is just looking, we're to record this just slightly past mid-February. So there's still a lot of time left in the year, but we'll see how it plays out. But I think 100K revenue for a brand new startup is both reasonable and I don't want to say lofty goal, but like lofty enough goal, right? Like I think there's a balance, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, like yeah. Firstly, like my startup, the winery, like we did less than 100K the first year. I think we did like 87 the first year, and I had probably more overhead. Like I had a building that we had to have, and like all these other, you know, making
Right.
wine, you got to spend money well before you can sell it because you got to age it and whatnot. So like I had a lot of money in going in and not coming out.
Right.
Um, yeah, I usually tend to think that like around 30K. It kind of changes depending on who I'm talking to, but probably around $30,000 in sales in a year moves you from like side hustle to like, okay, there's a business here.
I
Um,
think 30K is where what CRA tells you it's no longer a side hustle, right?
yeah, that's when you got to register for GST, PST. Um, that's when like it's get like depends on your industry. That's when it's getting like, okay, I can't do this all myself anymore. Um, you got to start thinking about tax planning and maybe I should have a separate
Right.
bank account and all this stuff. But anyone who's like making 5 grand, and it's like, oh, this is my business. It's like, oh, okay, right.
It's your side hustle,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's your hobby that's happens to earn some income probably.
Definitely, though, an accountant is key. Like we aren't we are somewhat bookkeepers, but we are not accountants. We do not know tax laws.
Yeah,
I rely heavily on my accountant. So
yeah, me too.
anybody who's listening to this that's considering starting a business, contact an accountant very first and make sure that it's someone that will work with you because that is the absolute, in my opinion, the absolute key being successful is having an accountant that's on board with you.
Yeah, good accountant, good lawyer is what I always tell people when they ask me what the first steps of entrepreneurship are. If you're serious about it, some people I know turn up their nose. They're like, I'm not gonna pay whatever it is, thousands of
Yeah,
dollars a year. But like, I know my accountant, he breaks down the like kind of tax credits and stuff that he's getting me, and like now with the two companies, like he moves money between them, but like on paper, obviously, that's like I don't know, like Canadian corporations with the same ownership, you can like pass losses and whatever through. So it's like he does all this kind of wizardry,
mhm,
and it's like I pay him, whatever it is between the two businesses, probably 5 grand a year, and just in tax credits alone, he's saving me more than that. So it's
right. Yeah,
like,
so it's well worth it.
yeah, exactly. So I talked to some kind of, I don't want to say baby entrepreneurs because that sounds condescending, but like some entrepreneurs that are um, trying to take the next steps, and some of them are kind of like, it costs $1,000 to incorporate a business. No way, like that's a waste of
Yeah,
my money. Or it's like like yeah, it's I sometimes I tell people how much my lawyers cost like hourly, and it's like yeah, it's a lot.
yeah,
but
yeah.
but I couldn't have done my business acquisition without my good lawyers. Like they did a very
Right.
thorough
Yeah.
job, and they were able to catch stuff that I couldn't have caught at a cursory glance. And negotiate and whatnot, and yeah. So good accountant, good lawyer. I think start there and learn the bookkeeping yourself as an entrepreneur. I think every entrepreneur should have an understand of their cash flow and
Definitely.
bookkeeping. Even like I'm bad at it. I'm bad at consolidating books. My business partner does a lot of that, but I understand if I can look at a QuickBooks report, I can I
Yeah.
get it. I think learn
I
that.
just have everything on I just have everything on an Excel spreadsheet and I send that to my accountant. And actually when I first sent it to him, I'm nervous like what's he going to think of this? He sends it back saying this is great. Like, perfect. If my accountant thinks my spreadsheet is great, then both of our lives are going to be a lot easier,
That
right?
must be, you must have the best spreadsheet I've ever seen then, because everyone I know that does that, their accountant charges them more to fix their bad spreadsheet than you would just pay a bookkeeper.
Yeah. So basically, my advice for your own spreadsheet is keep it simple enough
Yeah.
that it's very understandable, but also incorporate everything that needs to be incorporated in within it, like as far as your expenses, your revenue, your other such things. So
Yeah, your
that's
business is a lot more like straightforward than mine as well for bookkeeping purposes. Like, here's how much they're
it's
paying
like you
me.
spent money on fuel and
Yeah, so it's like the wine, especially, I'm selling in 80 different stores and different prices at different places and different taxes remitted, and sometimes you crack a bottle and serve a glass, sometimes you don't, sometimes you sell it as a whole, and there's a lot of bookkeeping to be done, but it is what it
right.
is. um yeah, I was gonna say, like, so that, because like my style of business, my exit strategy for my business, I think, is less like, I plan on having it forever, I think. um I
Hmm.
don't know, I don't have any children, and I don't know if I actually want children, but the idea of kind of legacy appeals to me, where like I can pass down a business that runs itself, like have a, like, Walmart,
Yeah.
Waltons or whatever. It's like the next generation takes it over, and you're not there every day running it. But it pays dividends. I kind of like that idea,
Right.
at least in theory, rather than um, getting
You
acquired by
see, and
somebody
there's
else.
another, you know, I've had that thought too. Like I've said, my time horizon is somewhere in that 5 to 10 years, where hopefully I can grow the business to the point of possibly another larger company saying, "Hey, Dave, we'll buy you out for a few $1 million." But yeah, I agree with that sentiment too. Like if you can grow the business to the point where you've got like general managers and an office admin in place to basically run the business for you while you're sitting on a beach in the Caribbean sipping pina coladas, well, that looks pretty good too, right?
Yeah, because I guess it all depends on like how much, like, what your ideal retirement looks like. Because realistically, if you had drivers and like an admin person, you could probably run the business from a beach in Mexico.
Yeah,
You wouldn't be able to like disconnect fully probably, but you could have a laptop going and you could figure stuff
right.
out, like, as long as you don't have to be physically in the truck, because that takes sometimes 10 hours of your day to drive up there and
14.
back, or more. Yeah, exactly. So it's like physically, um not having to do all the work is,
Yeah, and that's where I know I am right now, is like I'm the number one driver and I'm okay with that. That's fine.
yeah, I
But
think you
obviously
should
that is
for
definitely part of
yeah,
yeah.
at least 3
That's
years.
definitely part of the growth strategy is okay, whether it's, 2, 3 years, like you said, down the road where it's like, okay, I might still be the number one driver, but I also, hopefully by year three, there's also a number two, number three, and number four,
Yeah.
maybe even a number five driver. And, you know, they're all hopefully getting well paid and happy to work for me. And then as they're driving around, the business is making more money, right?
Yeah.
That's,
Well, and
that's,
then
that's the
in
goal.
those situations, it's like, if you want to take 2 weeks to go to Aruba, your number two driver can become your number one driver for a bit,
Right.
right? Um, I had a question about, so my, just for context, my friend owns a relatively large lawn care and snow removal company, like over $1 million a year in revenue,
Yeah.
and he's, for years, when he gets new clients that his drivers can't handle, instead of hiring more drivers, he just subcontracts to another snow removal
Yeah.
company. And I know that's very common in construction. That's very common in kind of those kind of industries. I'm wondering where your mind is at. Like, when do you want to hire more drivers, and when would it make more sense to subcontract another company that's already established?
Right. So subcontracting is huge in the logistics industry as well. And so are brokers. Like I'm listed with a few brokers, and I have actually had a meeting with one of the local larger companies here, subcontractors at this point, right? So um, I guess to answer your question, I haven't really thought that far ahead on that aspect, other than just this coming up soon in March with this 7 day a week contract where I know there's going to be days where I can't be doing those runs. So just subcontracting, like I say, to some guys that I know. And further down the road, yeah, there will obviously be decisions to make. And it's also going to be timing too, right? It's like, okay, well, do I have someone available that can go and do this run? Or do I call up another company and say, hey, I've got this run from A to B. I've quoted 100 for it. Can you do it for 450 or 475, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and then you can at least make money off of not doing anything.
yeah, and that's very common in logistics, right? Is like some other company's going to go do it, but I'm still going to make $50.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting because obviously you'll make more money if your employees do it for sure. Because
Right.
paying, even paying a decent wage for, I assume is like under $50 an hour, right? Like probably a lot of these drivers are making what 22. I don't know what the minimum wage is out there, but probably not that much. Like you're making more as the business probably enough to cover them, but
Some drivers make a some drivers make pretty good money. A lot of drivers make over 100 grand. So
okay. I mean,
again, that's those are drivers that are driving 5 days a week, 12 hours a day, and driving full size tractor trailers,
yeah,
and generally doing the long haul routes, right? So,
yeah, because if
but
you're
yeah, you're right. Some of the drivers are making, like you said, 22 to 25 an hour, and I
yeah,
think probably the median range for a driver is somewhere in that 30 to 35, say maybe $32 an hour, which is that's a pretty good wage, right?
if you can do the driving, that's a pretty good um, wage for that. Because I assume it's not really like you don't need a university degree to. You don't need a marketing degree from the University of Waterloo to drive a tractor trailer.
You need a driver's license. You need a
Yeah,
Class
whatever
A
the
license.
commercial one. Yeah. Yeah, but then so you'll probably earn more money as the business if you have employees, but then outsourcing it to a established company, you'll make less money, but then it's like they have the resources to do it, and then it's
Yeah,
like less work to do. So it is an interesting balance, but I think you hit it on the mark when you're not really thinking about it right now because you need to be in building phase right now, and building phase
yeah,
of your startup takes your blood, sweat, and tears, and you need to build the business yourself. And then, like, at least what I did was work until the business gets so big that you physically can't do all the work anymore. Like, I need to be in two places at once now. And then
right.
that's when I started hiring people. Like I was like, there's not like I will work every single hour that I'm awake. And I did that for the first 3 years of the business until I've like, oh, we have the opportunity to make all this more money, but I need to be in two places at once.
Yeah,
So then
which
now
you
it's time
can't.
to hire. Yeah. Not yeah, not until I buy a Optimus robot, then I can be at the farmers market sampling wine, and then the robot's at another one doing the same thing, right? Which kind of
You need one
transitions,
bartending.
yeah, that transitions me into something. I think we had this conversation on X before, but this is something that fascinates me in the industry. Is autonomous driving is coming. We
Yeah,
can't deny that. Whether you want it to or not, it's coming. It's on its way. They're working on it.
yeah.
And I think we talked about it briefly, but I will just to reiterate for the crowds here. What like would you? Do you think are you worried about getting replaced by a robot?
I've been hoping for years to get replaced by a robot.
Yeah, but like, so I guess it all because like, okay, so I follow what's going on in autonomous, especially um, semi trucks, because it's really relevant for our industry. Like Budweiser, parents company Anheuser Busch has been investing a ton of money into autonomous
Right.
semis because their biggest line item with shipping beer is the wages they got to pay
Yeah.
across, so, sucks for long distance truckers, but this is the way the world is. I'm not taking a stance for or against it. I'm just saying it's happening. That they're
The bottom line of the business, right?
yeah, exactly. And they're actually, as of like this year, they're cleared. They're doing basically fully autonomous drives between cities, and then a human has to take it the rest of the way from the outskirts of the city to the destination, the warehouse or
Right.
whatever. So that's already cutting out potentially 8 hours or what 14 hours a
Thousands.
day, right,
Yeah,
of wages. And for some of these long haul people, I know they have to have two people in the truck if they want it to like
that's
run
right.
full. Like if you want it to be running forever, you can only drive for a certain amount of time and whatever, and you need a backup
That's
driver and
right.
all
So
this.
yeah, basically with a team, the truck can continue going 24 hours until both drivers run out of hours for the week,
Yeah,
which gets capped at, I'd have to go back and look, 70, I think.
yeah,
So you can still drive 10 hours a day um, for 7 days. So between two drivers, instead of driving the truck moving 70 hours, it can move 140 hours.
yeah.
Don't quote me on these numbers because I haven't looked at them in a long time. But
But yeah, for
um,
the idea, like that's the idea is that you
yeah,
have somebody take over, and those laws are in place because people kept saying, "Wow, if I get there a day earlier, I'll get paid earlier," and then they fall asleep and crash a semi truck, and that kept happening. So our
yeah.
transportation board was like, "Hey, maybe let's,
We need some rules.
yeah."
Maybe we should have some rules.
But
Okay, but to
a
jump in
autonomous
there,
truck can drive 24 hours a day.
yeah, nobody's getting tired, right?
Yeah,
So yes, I have a lot of thoughts on this. First of all, again, kind of going back to the courier side of my business, the smaller packages, and we're already seeing, maybe not here in small town Canada, but in larger cities in the US, we're already seeing robo taxis and fully like FSD, fully self-driving Teslas, and that is something that I see my courier business incorporating at some point in the future. Where hey, I'm not taking up 6 hours of my day to drive to Kingston to Toronto and back, and I'm not paying someone else to do it. I'm just sending a car to do it. Perfect, right? So yes, that is something I've thought about. Further down the road, getting into larger, um, larger full size semis, tractor trailers. It's something that I've thought about a little bit in the back of my mind, but like as you just said, as a startup, I'm in the building phase. I haven't put a lot of thought into it because it's not a decision I need to make right now today. It's something that I've, like I said, just sort of has crept into the back of my mind, and you know, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, it might all of a sudden be at the forefront of my mind. But yeah, um, definitely opportunity there for business, for the bottom line. Like you said, it sucks for the driver who's formerly making $100,000 a year or more to go and drive, and now he's being replaced basically by the truck itself, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, like, yeah. I'm not here to make, not on this channel at least, to make opinions on whether this is the right thing to do. I'm just saying businesses are gonna do it, so it's like you got to adapt. But I think that sounds
right.
like a pretty, like you have a healthy opinion. Um, like you're seeing opportunity. You're like, I can buy robo taxis to drive my packages rather than being like, oh no, I'm gonna get replaced by a robo taxi.
Like I said, I'm hoping to get
Yeah.
replaced. It takes 6 hours out of my day for me to drive to Kingston, drive from Kingston to Toronto and back, and actually usually more than 6 hours because then you're sitting in Toronto traffic for at least an hour every time. Doesn't matter. You could be 12 noon on a Wednesday, you're going to be sitting in traffic somewhere in Toronto,
Yeah.
guaranteed, right? Like,
So drone
that's just
delivery,
the way
we
it
go
is.
over the traffic.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
I'm trying to think of like how, because like right now, I guess like if I was getting a courier delivery with a robo taxi, they pull outside of my building and I have to like go out there to the trunk and get it, right? Presumably.
So, yes, that's actually so on this north to south run that I've talked about, and I haven't named any names. They have actually said, will you be able to, or your drivers be able to go inside the buildings to retrieve the packages? And obviously, I said yes. Now, down the road, it's like, well, if it's just a robo taxi or Tesla pulling up, a fully self driving Tesla pulling up, well, then there's nobody there to go inside the building. At
Yeah.
that point, I would have to renegotiate the contract saying, okay, well, in order to in order to save you more money, I'm not paying someone to do it. But on your end, can you then load the vehicle, right? Like
I'm
it's something I've thought about as well, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like how much a company would have to pay me to like go retrieve my package. Like I'm not going outside in -35 to go get my package from a car. You can bring it into me. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of like what my limit. They probably have to pay like knock like $10 off my delivery, and then I would go get it for them.
So just kind of on that topic of autonomous vehicles, but let's you know do electric and hybrid vehicles as well, because as you can imagine, fuel is my far and away my
Yeah.
largest cost. Obviously, right? Like that's a given. So even replacing current vehicles with a hybrid
Hmm.
and all of a sudden cutting your fuel expense in half is another thing that is on my hopefully sooner rather than later agenda to do. Like I've already went and test drove a couple of RAV4 hybrids, and um, they actually are really nice cars. They're really nice. So that's something that I've thought about as well. Obviously, I've thought about Tesla because who hasn't at this point? Um, Now, obviously, there's a lot of people on X that are so very pro Tesla, mostly because they've invested in Tesla stock and they're making money hand over fist. Um, but there's also people that are very anti-Tesla that will tell you, oh well, you're not going to be able to start your vehicle in extreme cold. When the batteries die, you're done, right? So, I mean, there are some cons to weigh with Tesla. Do the pros outweigh the cons? My opinion is probably they do. So I don't know, just a lot for me to think about over the next, like I said, possibly sooner rather than later. That is that business's decision that is coming, maybe within 6 to 12 months, as opposed to what I was saying about another business decision that's in the back of my mind that could be 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
Yeah, 'cause that's definitely imagine knocking um fuel off your expense. Like how fast
Yeah,
is
line
that?
expense of
Yeah, how
yeah,
fast does that add up to $100,000 Tesla Model Y, or yeah, like whatever, another brand of cheaper, relatively cheaper electric vehicle. It's like that does not take very long to add up. Um,
right.
but I guess yeah, the only thing you'd have to worry about is range, I guess, for a lot of the stuff that you do. Um,
Yeah, and that's why the hybrids look really intriguing to me. The RAV4, you don't have to plug them in to charge. The electric side gets charged as the ICE side
okay.
is driving.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like to me, that's like wow, that seems like a pretty good um, good solution. Like, are you still going to be paying it for fuel? Yes. Are you going to be paying half as much for fuel? Also, yes. So like instead of going and filling up for $100, I'm going and filling up for $50, and I'm doing it less, right?
It's like any business, whatever your top cost is, if you can cut it by even a few percent, that's usually good. Like, so if you can cut it
Yeah.
significantly, that's probably. And then like I'm under the opinion that the technology is only going to get better. I
Yeah.
think that like I always compare it to like the combustion engine, where it's like early combustion engines were not good machines. Like they're they're like, I don't know if
Yeah.
you've ever like gone to a car meet or something and seen one of these like there's a guy in town that
Oh yeah.
here that has like a old Ford Model T that's running, and it's like, oh yeah, it
Yeah.
gets 1 mile a gallon, and it's burrowing black smoke, and it's like needs constant maintenance, and it's just like they're not good engines. And then look at the combustion engine
They
that
top out at about. I was gonna say they top out at about 40 kilometers an hour as well.
yeah, yeah, and it's shaking if you're going that fast. So like look at that compared to the technology of what we have now. I think it'll be very similar
Right.
to battery technology and electric cars in general. I think we'll be looking back at a 2025 Tesla and being like, wow, we were so bad at making cars back then. Because even look at the range in 10 years that we've gotten from electric vehicles, um,
Yeah.
has increased significantly. So I don't like that argument from um, the anti electric vehicle crowd that you were talking about, where they're like, oh, you can't even start it when it gets cold. It's like maybe that was true 10 years ago, but the technology is changing
Right.
and it's getting better. And I think it will continue to get better because obviously there's a lot of money um, moving into this. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Tons.
petrol prices right now, I mean, it's probably even more expensive where you are, but like mine just jumped up. I'm paying like $1.55 a liter right now, and it's like,
I live right beside a res,
yeah,
so my fuel prices are always low.
still. But I mean,
It's
like,
it's one,
sorry,
you know,
if you were writing a business plan for a logistics company 20 years ago, it's like estimated cost of fuel is this, and now it's like
yeah.
fuel's at an all-time high, right? So it's like, yeah, I don't know. That's definitely something interesting that I think people need to think about in the industry, and you're definitely you're seeing it as an opportunity, because I know people in my personal life that are just like, no, it'll never happen. They'll never get rid of cars. They're like, I'm never buying an electric vehicle. No, they're never gonna do it, and it's gonna come and sneak up on you. I think quicker than people think.
So I saw this old ad, I probably on X. It was an ad from like 120 years ago, or more, saying like all the reasons to keep your horse and not buy an automobile.
Yeah, and that was like 8 months before Ford. Yeah, it's yeah, it all the arguments that people make for vehicles are just like, I think like all the arguments that I see, at least, it's literally all just like the liberals want to take my car away from me. Like that's their biggest argument. It's like, and like I'm not political. Like I don't care either way,
Right.
but it's like I want a car because liberals like electric cars is not a good argument. Like
Yeah, no, it
that's
isn't.
just an emotional argument, right? Because I personally don't really care about cars. I like some of the night, like I'd like a Lamborghini, but mainly just for the flexing. Um,
Yeah.
but like if my
Go and rent
car,
one for the weekend,
yeah,
right?
if my car was silent and electric and drove itself, that's like my ideal situation.
Yeah.
Like so, I don't know. And I also get a lot of flack when I say like there's a Warren Buffett quote where he says like, don't invest in the next big thing, invest in the thing that's going to be here in 100 years or whatever. And then that's like why he didn't invest into tech until like what 2010 or whatever, because he's like, I don't know if tech's going to be here in 100 years. um Oil is not going to be here in 100 years, and I get a lot people get mad at me when I say that, but it's like,
Oil will still be here in 100 years.
I don't know, Dave. OPEC
Think about.
OPEC thinks
I'm
we have
just
63 years left, if you increase how we've been increasing.
So you take oil out of vehicles. So let's say we go all electric. No more oil is
Using a
used
lot
in
less of it.
any. We're using a lot less oil. but there's still petroleum-based products in almost everything else, right?
Yeah.
Like your plastics and everything.
Yeah.
So
But it's just like, I don't know. I think it's like, it's an industry that people are kind of like putting their hands over their ears and going, la, 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 la. Like they don't want to think about when we won't have this great oil money.
right.
But it's like, I listened to some, or I didn't listen to it, but I read the transcript because it was in Arabic. But I listened to the Saudi Crown Prince talking about how they've gotten their oil income to like down lower than like 30% of Saudi Arabia's, or it might be UAE, one of the those guys. They've
Hmm.
gotten their oil income from like 90% of their revenue down to like 30% of their revenue because they think in dynasties and the length of their
Right.
kingdom or whatever, and they were talking about how oil isn't going to be around forever, so we need to build an economy that's
Interesting.
self-sufficient. um so it's just like when they're saying it, I find it interesting when like middle class Americans are like, nope, we're never going to run out of oil. Like it's just, I don't know,
Yeah.
it just seems like a short-sighted uh
Right.
kind of idea that's like taking emotion into investing, um, which we all try not to do when it comes to being
Yeah.
investors.
So I can't see oil running out in my lifetime, but I'm a lot older than you, so maybe it will in yours.
Yeah, I think realistically, I'll probably live 150 years, and I think I will see the end of oil as we know it. But then someone's got to
Right.
come up with something else. But I think it's exactly like the why would you replace your horse thing, where I think like we're gonna look back and be like, oh,
Yeah.
like why did we have lead in gasoline, right? Like it's like I think we're
Mm.
gonna be like, why did we use plastic and petroleum? Like what were we
Yeah.
talking about? We were just so uneducated back then in the 2020s. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's
It's
an
really,
interesting thought
yeah, it will be
experiment.
interesting to see what'll happen.
Yeah. I
It'll
don't
be
care either
interesting to see what
way.
happens even the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I'm usually like whatever the funniest outcome is, that's what I want to happen. And I think
Yeah.
the world running out of oil when we rely so heavily on it, I think that is probably the funniest option.
Well, that's one way to look at it, I guess.
uh I don't know. But I guess that's probably about all I wanted to ask about your business. I think number one, I'm proud of you, and I speak for all of FinX here that we're all proud of you for making the jump and becoming an entrepreneur again. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. If anyone is listening from greater the Grand Theft Auto area, can they book you, or are you booked up all now?
Yeah, it's just I'm listed on Google Business, just loves logistics, and you'll find email address, phone number, all that fun stuff. And just call me, text me, email me, and I will figure out a way to take care of you.
He's ready to work. We're in the building phase
Yeah.
right now. He's ready to get some logistics loved. Um,
Yes, exactly.
well, yeah, good luck on your venture. I hope that we can do more updates next year, the year after, and the year after, and then I hope we can talk when you make that $5 million exit to some giant logistics company, because I think that'd be a
Yeah.
very interesting um, point of business that I don't.
Look at the entire history, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like seeing an
Look
acquisition
through
from
right
the
from
other
startup
side.
to exit.
Yeah, because like
Hmm.
I've done an acquisition from the buying side. It'd be very interesting to see it from the selling side. Would be an
Right.
interesting educational
Well, and
piece
I'm
for me.
excited to see what intrigue number three is, because maybe it is a business, maybe it isn't. But my money is on it's a business.
I don't. Yeah, when this comes out, I'm not sure. I'm still banned on Twitter until Tuesday. This will probably come out before I make any announcements, so keep an eye out for that. Secret project number one. March 15th is my day where my documents, where I can talk about it. Um, but if things go well, I might be able to talk about it in earlier March. I can drop some more details, depending, because it's like once we get all the things signed, then it's like it doesn't really matter.
Right.
So if I
'Cause-
can get things signed before the March 15th projected closing date, um, then I'm not waiting for anything else. So I could, in theory, talk about it. But
right.
I already have I have the Twitter thread like half made already, like in my drafts, waiting. So
Nice.
yeah, but
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to come on and chat about business and startups and entrepreneurship. This has been a blast. As you know, I find you very inspirational as well. Starting at such a young age and knowing a lot of your backstory, it's just like, wow, that's, took some courage to start at 18 years old and go out there on your own and tackle the world, right? So I'm proud of you as well. And like I say, I've always found you and your story very inspirational.
oh, I appreciate that. I'm just trying my best. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you around. Thanks for listening. You can follow both of us. The things will be in the description wherever you're watching this. I think it'll go live on X first, and then it'll be on my YouTube as well. But check the descriptions.
Awesome.
Dividend Dave over here.
Yeah,
Join the passive income posse.
that's right.
And
At
buy
Lovey 1973.
There you go. And then buy some wine, shrugdout.com, shrugdoc.com, Canada wine shipping, and buy some rubber stamps, MapleLeafRubberStamp.ca. Thank you.
And don't drink and drive.
Don't drink and do 4-hour career trips.
Yeah, exactly right.